Welcome to the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everyone. And we are deep in the rumor season. There's a lot of talk about all these free agents, all these guys who have been opted out or the teams have decided to not pick up options. And of course, the trade market, which we never really know what it is, but there are a lot of big names that have already been highlighted as possible departures from their current team, especially those that are on expiring contracts. Those are always players that are looked to be traded by major league teams if they're not anywhere near an extension with that player. But there's one prize jewel in this year's free agency market, which I think is a lot deeper than last year's. I do think that at the top, we just saw what Ohtani and Yamamoto did for the Dodgers. But in terms of top to bottom, I think this year's free agency class is a lot deeper. But it does start with a unicorn within himself, and that is Juan Soto. Juan Soto just turned 26 years of age, just took home his 5th Silver Slugger, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. But he is truly one of the most disciplined young hitters this game has ever seen. He is an absolute menace. He does not care to take walks. If you put it in the zone, much like Barry Bonds, he will do damage. And the fact that you get to pay this guy at 26 years old, and you have a feeling that he's going to want somewhere between 10 and 15 years on this contract, to bring him to 36, 40 years old. Juan Soto is the just prime candidate, and a guy that I am shocked only 4 teams have scheduled meetings with him. Because while yes, there's probably only 7, 8 teams that are currently in the position with their roster and their budget to be able to, make Juan Soto make sense. But this is Major League Baseball. These teams are worth billions of dollars. And the fact that there's only 4 teams that are meeting with Juan Soto at the winter meetings is absolutely insane to me, because if you do a poll across Major League Baseball, whether it be the owners, whether it be the executives, and you talk about top 5 players you would start a franchise with, Juan Soto is going to be on 90 to 100% of those lists because of his age and the kind of hitter that he is. There's guys like there's guys that are going to say Aaron Judge. There's guys that are obviously going to say Shohei Ohtani be probably the number one answer. But Bobby Witt Jr. is making a case for that spot. But I do think that Juan Soto is a whole different ball game. And I know he gets a lot of slack for his defense. Juan Soto has won a Gold Glove before. Juan Soto is an above average defender. And Juan Soto also, with the universal DH and you signing him to this decade plus long contract, has the ability to, just slide into and be one of the most productive DHs in the league after his prime years of being an outfielder are done. And the 4 teams that have decided to meet with him in this winter meetings, first off, my Boston Red Sox. I'm going to be very transparent here. If the Red Sox somehow, pitch Juan Soto the highest offer, because I do think he's looking for most money, whether that be on an AAV basis or just an overall contract value basis, ideally both. If the Red Sox are willing to give Juan Soto the most money out of anybody, and they actually get him, I will be jumping up and down. We will have a big celebration podcast. It'll be huge, because that is a generational hitter that you're bringing into the fold. But I do think the Boston Red Sox are more in there for the optics. I do think that John Henry and Alex Cora and Craig Breslow now in the fold, they're embarrassed with how the last couple years have went. And they have these top 4 prospects that are coming up through the pipeline, Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell, Marcelo Meyer, and Kyle Teal, who are all expected to at least be starting level players, if not all-star caliber players. So you would think the time to, build around this core and spend the money would be, if not this year, in the next 2-3 years. And Juan Soto is going to be in his prime for all of that. John Henry has talked for years and years and years about how 30-year-old pitchers scare him on the market. That was his reasoning for not signing John Lester, and then he goes out and signs David Price. It was more of a Dave Dombrowski decision, but I do think that there is very little risk or doubt when you sign a check for Juan Soto. The hitting production that he has given, the fact that he has had no off the field issues, the fact that despite him playing on 3 teams in his young career, has never really had any players come out and speak against him as a teammate. I don't see why you wouldn't sign the check for Juan Soto if you're the Boston Red Sox. I just don't think that they're serious enough to do it. I think they just want the optics of, we met with him, we gave him a substantial offer, we did our part. We did our due diligence as a big market team, even though they haven't been acting like a big market team the last 2.5 years. The other team that met with him that I don't think is as serious is the Toronto Blue Jays. And the Toronto Blue Jays obviously were a red herring last year. We had a little Blue Jay on the set when it appeared that Shohei Ohtani had a chance of being a Toronto Blue Jay, that he was flying there to meet with them, substantial offer on the table, all those good things. And it is reported that the Blue Jays matched the Shohei Ohtani contract with the Dodgers. $700 million was what they were willing to pay. And Shohei Ohtani decided, obviously, to opt in and go to the better ball club over there in LA. And, he won a championship in his first year. So it's looking like the right decision for him. So everyone's just saying, oh, well, if they're willing to spend $700 million on Ohtani, then they just have a money burning a hole in their pocket. And they're willing to spend that money on Juan Soto. Again, there are a half dozen teams, I think, that should be signing this check and offering to Juan Soto. But the Blue Jays are an interesting mark because we saw how the Yankees went from a team that missed the playoffs last year with an elite right-handed hitter in Aaron Judge, and they add that lineup protection with a much-needed left-handed bat in Juan Soto, and they're able to go to the World Series. The Blue Jays, similar situation. They just missed the playoffs. They have a right-handed elite bat in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And, they have the possibility of, making the playoffs with an addition of a Juan Soto and maybe going on a run to a World Series for the first time in quite a while for those Toronto Blue Jays fans. So that all makes sense. Juan Soto would fit on every team in baseball. He would make a legitimate, reasonable difference for the contract on at least a half dozen. The thing that makes me think that the Blue Jays aren't going to sign Juan Soto is the fact that, unlike the Yankees, where Aaron Judge was already locked up, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is on an expiring contract. He's about to be a free agent, and he's going to want to get paid. And I think it's very hard as an organization to look at your homegrown superstar and say, hey, you're a first baseman, hey, like all the arbitration talking points of talking down the value of a player, and then going out there and giving Juan Soto, I don't know, double to triple what you're willing to give Vladdy, who's your homegrown superstar, face of your franchise. So the Blue Jays, obviously, they clearly have the money to throw at Soto. Obviously, Juan Soto would help the 2025 Blue Jays a ton. But I think you just risk the opportunity of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., holding your organization hostage or burning that bridge that is already kind of shaky because of the trade rumors. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. next offseason, if the Blue Jays let him get him there, is going to probably be somewhere in the $200 to $300 million range, which is going to be a lot easier for the Blue Jays to stomach than signing Juan Soto to be the winning bidder in this. I think you're going to have to be close to $600 million. So it'll be very interesting to see if the Blue Jays actually make a substantial offer and Juan Soto shows that, hey, like this was all about the money. And I'm going to go to the Blue Jays despite them not having Vlad Jr. locked up, besides not having Bo Bichette locked up, besides being very right-handed and, not having a super deep lineup. So it's going to be very interesting to see if the Blue Jays are real players or if, just like with Shohei Ohtani, they're just in there as a money leverage play, as a team that, has the money to spend but isn't a very likely suitor. And then there's the two New York teams. The Yankees obviously need to be in these meetings. They are the New York Yankees. They do spend money. They just went to the World Series because of Juan Soto in major part. They have to offer him big time money. And Aaron Judge, like I said, he's already locked up with his over $300 million contract. He is financially set. When he hit free agency, he was much older than Juan Soto, and he knows how important Juan Soto was to that team from all the years he played there prior to this run that he went on in 2024 with Juan Soto. So I think it wouldn't damage his ego at all for them to pay him the $500 to $600 million that he's going to get. And the Yankees have to be up there in the bidding. Now, the Yankees right now, because of Garrett Cole's contract, because of Aaron Judge's contract, because of Giancarlo Stanton's contract that still has a couple years left on it, they'll have a lot of salary tied up into those four players with not a lot of deferred money tricks like the Los Angeles Dodgers have with all their superstars, not a lot of homegrown discount contracts like the Atlanta Braves have with their young nucleus. Well, they're now in their prime aging nucleus. But the Yankees just feel like an obvious choice. Like, how do you let Juan Soto walk? You have to spend the money. You made it to the World Series with him. What would your team be without him, especially with how right-handed they are outside of him? But my choice and my prediction for Juan Soto is, I think, the most obvious one is the New York Mets. He's been tied to them since before the Padres traded him to the Yankees. He showed that he can perform in New York already, which is, I think, a bogus narrative that gets talked about a lot with the bigger markets. Like, oh, can he play under the spotlight in New York or in Boston or in LA? Juan Soto can hit anywhere. And the New York Mets just went on a magical, magical ride without a, 1A, 1B to Francisco Lindor, without like a true second star. Pete Alonso's great. Brandon Nimmo's a great player, but not a superstar player, that can really balance out the lineup and, make you go from a fringe playoff team to a World Series contender. And Steve Cohen is the richest owner in sports, well, in baseball at least. And he has all the money in the world to throw at him. He's shown before that he's willing to spend. If it makes sense, he tore the team down when it didn't look like it was making sense, and now they just went on a run to the NLCS. I see no reason why he would not throw crazy money at Juan Soto. Like I said, it's the type of investment that even if you have to trade the whole team around him, you're not mad having Juan Soto on your team for the next decade. He'll sell a ton of jerseys. He'll put up crazy numbers. And, if there is a opt out or a no trade or there's no trade clause or anything like that, Juan Soto's been moved multiple times before. I wouldn't shock me if there's a way he gets traded yet again, even despite signing this big time contract. But there are a lot of other hitters on this market, and the New York Mets can't pay them all. I know I just said Steve Cohen has the money, but he doesn't have the money to pay everybody. The hitter market is extremely, extremely exciting. I think since the Yankees miss out on Juan Soto, they go to the first base market, where Anthony Rizzo's been limping along for the last couple of years. And they go out there and they sign Christian Walker from the Arizona Diamondbacks, one of baseball's most underrated players, a guy who is over 30, so he's not going to cost major, major money. A guy that I don't think would mind shaving his beard to play for the Yankees, the Bronx Bombers, him playing in that bandbox. He's a guy that has a high on base, hits a lot of home runs, and I think would make a ton of fun. Pete Alonso for the New York Mets. I don't think they're going to be able to re-sign Pete Alonso after signing Juan Soto. And I do think that there is another team in California that has a lot of pressure this offseason. That is the San Francisco Giants. This is a team that routinely misses out on big names in free agency, a team that now has former star catcher Buster Posey as their president of baseball operations. And I think that, that is their sign that they're really trying to bring back the championship culture, bring back getting stars in San Francisco. And they were able to re-sign Matt Chapman, extend him. And I think having Matt Chapman and Pete Alonso at the corners for a team that didn't have a lot of power otherwise is a really big move for them. I think Pete Alonso will have big jersey sales. I think he'll have big homers in San Francisco and keep the Giants competitive. This is the kind of player that, I think the Giants would love to have because he's not top shelf, but he's still a huge name to be able to put a bow on your offseason with. Carlos Santana, another first baseman who just won his first Gold Glove at 38 years old. He's been really, really productive here in his 30s. And I think the Houston Astros, a team that, is kind of in flux right now about what direction they're going in. Are they at the end of a dynasty or are they still in it? And I think Carlos Santana has some veteran production and leadership. They only have 5 left-handed hitters on the roster right now. So Carlos Santana being able to hit from the left side as a switch hitter is going to be really valuable, I think, to them as a guy that can just, platoon at first base, hit in the DH role a little bit, move around, Gold Glove caliber defense when he's out there in the field. I think Carlos Santana would make a lot of sense and kind of be similar to the Jose Abreu signing, but for a much smaller dollar amount. The same kind of thing there. Paul Goldschmidt is not going to be returning to the St. Louis Cardinals, who are going into full rebuild mode. And I think Paul Goldschmidt makes a lot of sense to, sign a 1 or 2 year deal to go back home where his career began in Arizona and, help fill the void that Christian Walker is going to leave. I think Paul Goldschmidt, in a first base DH swing role makes a lot of sense there to wrap up his Hall of Fame career for a team that, when he was there, didn't have a lot of chances in the playoffs, but now has a core of guys that have been to the World Series before and, are trying to win another ring. So I think Paul Goldschmidt to the Arizona Diamondbacks makes a lot of sense. Anthony Rizzo, like I said, he was limping along, but that veteran leadership and that ability to hit in big games and just the resume that Anthony Rizzo has is super, super valuable. And Terry Francona, I don't think is going to get, the ability to go crazy spending this offseason. But I do think something that the Cincinnati Reds desperately need is a veteran guy that's been there before, a guy who's played in the NL Central and, knows those ballparks, knows some of those managers and pitchers. Anthony Rizzo is a Cincinnati Red to bring into the fold, veteran leadership, see what he's got left in the tank. It's not going to cost a ton of money with the performance he's had the last couple of years. And I think he makes a lot of sense for their culture that Terry Francona is trying to build. Second base market is pretty lackluster outside of Gleyber Torres. Gleyber Torres actually had a really nice bounce back year in 2024 for the New York Yankees, a guy that was acquired in the Aroldis Chapman deal from the Chicago Cubs back in the day. Looked like he had the potential to be a perennial all-star, superstar level player at the position. Has just been really solid. I think the Toronto Blue Jays do have money to spend, and I do think that with Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr.'s future, in limbo, adding Gleyber Torres to that infield to help solidify it, and just to make their team better makes a lot of sense. So I think Gleyber Torres will get some nice money from the division rival in Toronto and walk. Third base market, there's some other interesting names like J.D. Davis, Yohan Moncada, and Gio Urshela that I do think teams will take a flyer on, especially Urshela and Davis and Moncada all having multi-position eligibility. But Alex Bregman is a super interesting free agent, a guy who has a sneaky WAR total for his career. Obviously has the playoff experience being part of the Houston Astros dynasty. And I do think that the Philadelphia Phillies are in desperate need of someone who's been there and gotten over the hump. And Alec Boehm, despite his breakout all-star first half, just hasn't been, to the full order. He was, missing the playoffs. Uh, Alex Bregman with the positional versatility as well. He can fill in to give Trey Turner some days off. He can fill in to give Bryson Stott some days off at second base as well. I think Alex Bregman to the Philadelphia Phillies makes a lot of sense. I think they're going to trade one of Nick Castellanos or Kyle Schwarber this offseason. And I do think adding a guy like Bregman, to offset makes a lot of sense and is a guy who will help with that culture and help them get over the top, hopefully, in the Bryce Harper era. The shortstop market is pretty fun, actually. Jose Iglesias needs to go back to the New York Mets. He was their mascot, their spirit animal. He was so many things to them. Paul DeJong, I think, is going to be the starting shortstop for the Pittsburgh Pirates this year. With O'Neal Cruz being moved to center field, I think that Paul DeJong has just been a really solid, hitting shortstop for a few years now. And I think he'll be a nice discount option for the Pirates in the ilk of the guys they've been signing recently. Aroldis Chapman, Rowdy Tellez, Carlos Santana, etc. I think he makes a lot of sense there and just helps with their lineup overall. Ha-Seong Kim has a lot of positional versatility as a guy that can, play all these positions. I think the New York Yankees really need someone like that can play some third base, play some second base, play some shortstop. He's got a ton of versatility, and I think them, losing Juan Soto, they're going to need to focus on some defensive help, and Ha-Seong Kim helps that across the entire infield pretty much. But the big prize at shortstop is Willy Adames. Milwaukee Brewers are not going to pay him. He's been one of the best hitting shortstops in baseball for a while now. And a team that has always been linked to him is, yes, the super team, Los Angeles Dodgers. They've already said that Mookie Betts is going to be moving to the infield. I do think the Dodgers infield next year is going to be Freeman at first, Betts at second, Muncy at third, and Adames at shortstop. I think they give him a good amount of money, tell him to come play with a real competitive team, and, help him pursue rings as well as making a nice chunk of change in that star-studded infield. In left field, Tyler O'Neill had a really nice year for the Boston Red Sox when he was healthy. I think he's the perfect kind of guy for Cleveland to throw a little money at, a team that desperately needed some power, a guy that can play in the corner outfield, play a little center field, DH for you as a right-handed bat. And I just think Tyler O'Neill isn't going to have a huge market of suitors, but is well above replacement level and a guy that could really help a team like Cleveland continue to try to stay at the top of a much more competitive AL Central. Jurgensen Profar had a breakout year for the San Diego Padres. And like I said, culture is a really important thing in the MLB clubhouse. And owners know that, GMs know that. And I think Jurgensen Profar is going to get, sizable money for his age and his name because the Padres need him. And I think they bring him back. Their outfield outside of Jackson Merrill and Fernando Tatis, that other spot's wide open. And I think Profar is going to be locked in there for the next couple years. Mark Canha is one of the most underrated players in baseball. He produces very solid numbers as an everyday player, platoon player every single year. And, Detroit's probably not going to bring him back. I have Detroit looking at a few other veteran options, but Mark Canha is the perfect kind of guy if you're a Kansas City Royals to just steal him from your division rival and just get quality at bats from. I really think that that's a nice fit for him. To go over to Kansas City and just help that young core take that next step. Michael Conforto is a free agent again. He's played in New York. He's got that clean-cut look, and the Yankees are going to be looking to replace Alex Verdugo and Juan Soto in their outfield. I think Michael Conforto to the New York Yankees makes a whole lot of sense. That short porch in right field should help the power numbers come back up from the last couple of years playing in San Francisco, where he's had some spurts of power, but not the overall power seasons that he used to have when he was a Met. I think that he has a really good bounce back potential signing with the New York Yankees. And speaking of Alex Verdugo, that's another guy that I see going to the Pittsburgh Pirates, a guy that, was the last out of the World Series. I think he needs to be in a smaller market, and he needs to be on a team that doesn't care about attitudes, that just wants production. And the Pittsburgh Pirates are perfect for that. And I think the Pirates are going to be sneaky spenders this offseason, not in terms of big money contracts, but just signing some guys that you wouldn't expect them to, because they know with the control they have right now with their big three starting pitchers, Keller, Jones, and Skeens, they only have a few years in that window, and they need to try to make a wild card push throughout that time. So Alex Verdugo, who, despite his many problems, has been a productive player, goes to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Center field, I think Harrison Bader returns to the New York Mets. Tyrone Taylor was very good. Brandon Nimmo was good. I think they're going to have Juan Soto. But Harrison Bader, I don't think he's going to cost a lot of money. He was a really good defensive replacement for them, good base runner off the bench, and it didn't seem like he needs to be the guy anymore, which early in his career, it seemed like he had that kind of swagger. I think he's okay with coming back to the Mets on, a one-year deal and just being part of this team that has World Series hopes. Michael A. Taylor, another very underrated player. I think that he's going to be an Arizona Diamondback. There is a ton of places that he could go on very low money, but I do think Michael A. Taylor to the Arizona Diamondbacks makes a lot of sense with guys like Jake McCarthy, not being what they are, having a lot of left-handed hitting outfielders as well. I think Michael A. Taylor makes a lot of sense there. Kike Hernandez is going to do everything he can to be a Dodger again. I expect him to go back there. And in right field, Anthony Santander, he's going to be a Seattle Mariner. This is a team that has one of the weakest outfields in baseball outside of Julio Rodriguez, a team that desperately needs power in a ballpark that's hard to hit home runs. And Anthony Santander, despite having a 40 home run season last year as a switch hitter, which is a very rare feat actually in the sport of baseball, doesn't seem to have much interest at all. And that's the kind of guy that Seattle signs, is the guy that's not going to be huge money, that doesn't have a lot of competition to bid up the price, and a guy that'll just help that lineup be competitive as they try to push for a wild card spot again in 2025. Teoscar Hernandez, I really hope he's a Boston Red Sox. The Dodgers talked about how important he was for the culture in their locker room this past year. He won the home run derby. He won a World Series championship. And the Red Sox are so left-handed that a right-handed power back like Teoscar Hernandez, they missed out on the bidding war last year with him. I believe they offered him $16 million and the Dodgers paid him $20 million for last year. I don't think that they're going to make that same mistake again, and they're going to get a really solid right-hand back in there that can help, mentor and lead this young roster. And Max Kepler, a guy who's been riddled with injuries, I think is the perfect Dodgers project, a guy that they signed for not a lot of money that ends up being productive in a platoon role. I think he would be a really nice replacement there for Teoscar Hernandez in LA. The DH market, Andrew McCutchen, Pirates bring him back. Like, what are you doing? Don't let him walk. He needs to finish his career there, and I think he's got one last year in him. JD Martinez, I think, is going to return to the Detroit Tigers. This is a very young team, and if you notice with my fits, it's a lot about culture as well as fit. JD Martinez is a guy that is big credited for the 2018 World Series Red Sox for, bringing video into the room, changing the approach, making these young players take that next step. And I think JD Martinez, as basically a player coach, you bring him in to this lineup in Detroit that's extremely young, the youngest in baseball. And you will see that second year leap with this core. AJ Hinch, I think, has a lot of respect for JD Martinez as a professional hitter that he's both coached as well as coached against. And JD Martinez wants to play baseball. He wants to play meaningful baseball. And I think Detroit's one of his best opportunities to do that. Jock Peterson, I think, is going to be a Washington National. This is a team that let guys like Joey Gallo go this offseason, a team that has a nice young core coming up. And I think Jock Peterson on a team that's heavily right-handed could help be that, that gap there as a left-handed platoon, DH, everyday kind of guy, and hopefully get traded to a contender that has an injury or a need. The pitching market, though, is much more robust than last year. Top of the market is Corbin Burns. And Corbin Burns, I'll make the pitchers a lot quicker here as we're going pretty long. The Corbin Burns Chicago Cubs need to make a splash. You have the highest paid manager in baseball. You had super high expectations last year that you did not meet, and you got Shota Imanaga for a ridiculous price. So now you get the opportunity to, pay up, get a front of the line starter, and really make a push in that division that you should be on top of, especially with the Cardinals breaking things down, the Pirates and the Reds, I think, still being a little too young in the teeth, and the Brewers we're basically refusing to spend money. Corbin Burns helps bridge that gap and gets the Cubs back to where people expect them to be. And I think they're one of the few teams that are willing to make that financial commitment to the 30-year-old starter. Roki Sasaki, I talked about it with him being posted. He's going to be a Dodger. I think that's very clear. That's where he wants to be. I'm not saying there's a zero shot that he goes to San Diego to play with Yu Darvish or, gets convinced by another team that they'll sign him to an extension early somewhere else. But I think Roki Sasaki to the Dodgers is about as done as it can be, especially with the way he's handling his posting. Blake Snell was almost a New York Yankee last offseason, and I think he will be the one this offseason. The former Cy Young winner had a really rough start in San Francisco with injuries and performance, and then ended up having a really nice second half, including throwing a no-hitter. Blake Snell is one of the most efficient pitchers in this game, and a guy that, will help boost that rotation that is going to need it with the loss of offensive production from Juan Soto. Max Fried, I think, is going to be a San Francisco Giant to replace Blake Snell. He's younger, ground ball pitcher on a team that has really good defensive players. And I think that's going to be enough for the Giants to, sign that check. Like I said, I think with Buster Posey in-house, they're going to want to have a nice offseason. I think they're going to want one bigger hitter and one bigger pitcher. I think that's Alonso and Fried. And I think those guys are going to help, take this next era of Giants baseball in the right direction. Yusei Kikuchi, left-handed pitcher, had a breakout second half with the Astros last season. I think he's going to be an LA Dodger. I think they need a left-handed starter to be consistent with their whole lineup of guys. And I think that Kikuchi is going to want to play with Sasaki, Yamamoto, and Ohtani. Nathan Eovaldi opted out of his contract with the Texas Rangers, and I think he is the perfect fit for the Baltimore Orioles. This is a guy who's pitched in the AL East before, and most importantly, is a big game pitcher. This is a guy that will take the ball in a must-win game and give you quality depth in innings. They're going to lose Corbin Burns. They just are not willing to pay that kind of money. And the Baltimore Orioles, with Corbin Burns and without him, the last 2 years have went winless in the postseason. If you have Nathan Eovaldi on your postseason roster, you're not getting swept. And that's going to be a huge step in the right direction for the Baltimore Orioles. With this new ownership group, I think they're going to be willing to pay the money for a quality, proven commodity like Nathan Eovaldi. Jack Flaherty, I think, is going to go to the San Diego Padres, and realizing that he's the odd man out with the re-signs here in LA, and he wants to stay in California close to home. The San Diego Padres are going to be out Joe Musgrove for the entire 2025 season with Tommy John. And I think that they're going to want a quality pitcher to replace him. And Jack Flaherty is the kind of guy that I think will be willing to take a shorter term deal to just be in a competitive environment. Sean Manaea, I think, is going to be the replacement for Max Fried in Atlanta. I think the Braves are going to be willing to pay him. He's the kind of guy who in his career has been more of a back-end starter, but with the switch and arm angle, similar to Chris Sale, who I think is going to be his new teammate, has made him more of a front-of-the-line rotation arm. And I think that he's going to be the best value on the board for top-of-the-rotation pitchers, and I think the Braves love themselves a good bargain. There are 4 Cy Young vets also hitting the market. I think Justin Verlander returns to Detroit. Like I said, culture. I'm going to keep preaching it all off season long. And Justin Verlander's former manager, AJ Hinch, I think it understands that as well with this young group and is going to supplement it, bringing Justin Verlander, the former Cy Young and MVP, back to where it all started in Detroit and have him, pitch some quality innings in this rotation. He doesn't have to be the man anymore because Tariq Skubal has arrived. He is the Cy Young winner, but Verlander will help fill out that rotation, pitch some much needed innings, and bring that veteran leadership. I think Max Scherzer returns to his original start as well with the Arizona Diamondbacks. This is a team that didn't get the innings they wanted out of Montgomery or Eduardo Rodriguez last year. Has Zach Gallen as an ace still, but Merrill Kelly took a step back. They just need some innings, and Max Scherzer is a big name that will pitch those innings, will be good while he's healthy, and I think is a guy that makes a lot of sense to go back home. Shane Bieber is going to sign with the best rehab group in MLB with the Boston Red Sox. There's so many pitchers that have signed with us over the last 4 years, mainly just to rehab with us. And with Shane Bieber recovering from Tommy John, with him, having connections to Boston, I just think that makes a lot of sense. And a guy that, was nasty his first couple starts of the year, this year before going down with Tommy John, I think he wants to recover properly and get back and show people that wasn't a fluke, that he can still pitch like that. So I think Shane Bieber to the Boston Red Sox makes a lot of sense. And Clayton Kershaw, he said he wants to pitch in 2025. He's been doing this for years. 1-year deal with the Dodgers, and he'll make 10 to 20 starts. And that's best case. If Clayton Kershaw pitches 20 starts, that'll be amazing. He's very close to 3,000 strikeouts. He just won another ring, but wasn't really a part of it. So I think he'd like to be a part of it this time around. So Clayton Kershaw back to the Dodgers. No shocker there. There's a group of innings eaters pitchers that I really like. Nick Pivetta, I think, even though the Red Sox extended the qualifying offer, I do think the Houston Astros to replace Kikuchi and Verlander's innings like the potential there, and they're really good at developing pitchers. I think that they could unlock some things in Nick Pivetta and make him a really solid number 3-4 starter for them. And I think they'll sign him to a 3-year, $60 million contract, which, that's really good money for Pivetta, and a guy that, has been an upstanding teammate throughout his entire time in Boston. So I think he'll sign with Houston and, add to that rotation that's going to be losing a few pieces this year. Nick Martinez also got a qualifying offer, but I don't think anyone's going to touch that. He's going to be back in Cincinnati, pitching some quality innings for the Reds. Kyle Gibson and Jose Quintana. Quintana was with the Mets. Gibson was with the Cardinals. They're just both guys that go out there and get outs. And I think the Mets understand that. I think the Mets, with them signing Juan Soto, are going to need those innings and, losing Manaea, but also gaining Senga back. They just want innings. And I think they already put the qualifying offer out there for Severino, which means he's going to be back. Quintana and Kyle Gibson, helps fill out that rotation for a team that's trying to take that next step. Lance Lynn also, I think, could be on the move. He's a guy that's very, very old school, and I will not be shocked if he ends up being with the Chicago Cubs, because he's pitched in that division forever. He had a really high ERA, but just a guy that can eat innings for you. A nice little thing on top of Corbin Burns. Usually when a team signs a big starting pitcher like that, they sign a fringe back end guy as well to help bolster the rotation if there's any injuries. And I think Lance Lynn makes a lot of sense there as a guy that's shown he can pitch innings on innings on innings. There's a ton of other guys worth a look in the starting pitching market, but I just don't have enough conviction to tell you where they're going to go. Andrew Heaney, Patrick Corbin, Michael Lorenzen, Trevor Williams, Alex Cobb, Matthew Boyd, Colin Rea, Frankie Montas, Wade Miley, Martin Perez, Spencer Turnbull, and John Means all could make impacts on the back ends of different teams' rotations, and bounce back to be mid to top rotation arms like a lot of those guys have been in the past. The reliever market's really interesting too, to round things out here. Tanner Scott's the big prize, one of the best pitchers, period, in baseball, in terms of just striking out and weak contact. From the left side as well, I think the Toronto Blue Jays, with their bullpen problems from last year, are going to spend the money on him. They're hoping Romano, bounces back, and Romano and Scott at the back of their bullpen can help them make that push to get back in the postseason conversation and hopefully convince Vladimir Guerrero to stay, unlike being able to convince Juan Soto or Shohei Ohtani to come there. Jeff Hoffman had a breakout year of the Phillies this year. I think he's going to be a Cub. They like doing this, the Cubs, whether it's Hector Neris or different guys over the years. A guy that just had a breakout year, as a nice name to add to your bullpen. go out there and get him. I think Jeff Hoffman for the Cubs makes a lot of sense. David Robertson is going to be a New York Met again, a guy that opted out of his contract with Texas, wants to be on a winning team, wants to make some more money. I think the Mets are willing to do that there to help bolster their bullpen. Aroldis Chapman is going to be a Minnesota Twin. This is a guy who just is a hired gun at this point. He just wants money. He pitches quality innings still to this day, still hits 100 miles per hour, which is crazy. But Aroldis Chapman to the Minnesota Twins, a team that has a major league low 2 left-handed pitchers on their major league roster right now. I think they need left-handed pitching badly, and Aroldis Chapman, is a guy who makes your offseason look a little better, even though he's not what he used to be. Clay Holmes, don't think he returns to New York. I think he'll sign with the Philadelphia Phillies, a team that, like I said, is trying to change the culture a little bit, but also bring in quality guys. Dombrowski loves to sign nasty relievers, and Clay Holmes has nasty stuff. Kenley Jansen has said all year with the Boston Red Sox how great his time with LA was and how he wants to be back there. I think Kenley Jansen finds a way back to the Dodgers, whether he's closing games or not, that is yet to be seen. The Dodgers don't have a clear as day closer right now, so Kenley Jansen might be saving games for the reigning champs in 2025. Chris Martin, I think, is going to the Kansas City Royals. This is a team that has shown they're not afraid to spend money. They took Michael Walker off the pitching market already. And Chris Martin is another guy, veteran leadership, quality starts and innings. Chris Martin's going to be out there as a guy who helps those young guys and does his part. Carlos Estevez is going to be a Seattle Mariner. I think this is the perfect kind of guy for them to add to their bullpen with Munoz. Estevez has shown in Philadelphia and in LA that he is just a guy that does better outside of the closing role. And I think that he's going to be really, really money for the Seattle Mariners, a guy that they can flip, or if they, make a postseason push, be a really big, high leverage guy. Kirby Yates, I think, is going to be a Boston Red Sox. I know Liam Hendricks is projected to be the closer for the Boston Red Sox next year, but he's coming back off injury, and I'm not sure what Liam Hendricks we're going to get. Kirby Yates is coming off a nasty season, and I think a lot of people are just acting like it's a fluke. I know relievers are very tricky, and it's not the most consistent position, but I think Kirby Yates has a lot of great stuff that Andrew Bailey, who is a pitching savant, will appreciate the swing and miss stuff. So Kirby Yates, I have him, coming back. He misses bats, coming to the Boston Red Sox. Craig Kimbrell, I think, is going to be saving games for the Los Angeles Angels to start 2025. That's a just a marketable Angels signing. Signing 9-time All-Star Craig Kimbrell. I don't know what he's got left in the tank. I hope he bounces back and gets traded to a contender and, gets 500 saves. But Craig Kimbrell, I think if he wants to pitch as a closer in 2025, it's going to be, with a team like the Angels to start the year. And Paul Sewald's also on the market, but I think the Arizona Diamondbacks bring him back. He's been a huge part of their success over the last couple of years, and a guy that, is just always gets a lot of credit as a consummate professional. So very, very excited for him to come back to the Diamondbacks and, give it another run. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we like to throw back down the third baseline to this day in baseball history. And there was a lot of awards given out here on November 16th in baseball history. But there was a, big move in the front office that happened on this day in 2018. And that was Mark Elias being brought on as the general manager of the Baltimore Orioles, replacing the recently fired Dan Duquette, who, has a long history of success in the major leagues as well. And Mark Elias is a big part of the reason the Baltimore Orioles have gotten to the point that they have. He's been great with player development. He's signed a lot of sneaky nice deals over the years. But now he has a new ownership that seems to be willing to spend, that a team that's been swept in the postseason the last 2 years. It's a really big season for the Baltimore Orioles. And I know getting their closer back from injury is going to be huge. He is nasty. But I don't think they're going to be willing to play ball with Corbin Burns. And I think that they're going to have to find ways to be creative with these free agents. Guys like Nathan Eovaldi make a lot of sense to me, but, the big thing for the Orioles, and I didn't even get into the hitter and pitcher market for trades, is taking from their bulk, their prospect hoarding they've done, and going out there, getting a frontline starter, getting another quality hitter that's been there before, a veteran bat. Those kind of things will be huge for the Baltimore Orioles. And I think that if anybody is going to go out there and pay a big package for Garrett Crochet, they should be at the top of the list. Rounding out things here on the show, the Silver Slugger Awards were announced in both leagues, and usually this isn't a huge deal. It's kind of just a feather in the cap of different guys' careers. But there was actually a lot of guys that got to a really nice number in their career that I genuinely appreciated. Jose Ramirez won his 5th Silver Slugger, making him one of 4 third basemen to ever do that, joining Nolan Arenado, George Brett, and Wade Boggs. So that's elite company for Jose Ramirez. But there was a ton of other guys that were successful as well. Juan Soto won his 5th, making him tied with Mike Trout for the most Silver Sluggers by the age of 26 in a career. Salvador Perez won his 5th Silver Slugger, which I think is huge for his Hall of Fame candidacy, to have 5 Silver Sluggers and 5 Gold Gloves to go along with all his postseason success. And then, if he's able to get to 2,000 hits, I'm going to be checking that box for the Hall of Fame Salvador Perez. Aaron Judge, Francisco Lindor, and Bryce Harper all won their 4th. So 5 Silver Sluggers and Gold Gloves means a lot to me. That's a half decade of being considered the best hitter or defender at your position. I know it's a little arbitrage, not always the best hitter or pitcher, best hitter or fielder wins those awards, but winning it once or twice might be a fluke. Winning it 5+ times, I think, is a trend. And Jose Altuve and Mookie Betts both got 7 now. Mookie Betts won the utility in the National League, which was interesting, and Jose Altuve won his 7th at second base. Both of those guys are well on their way to the Hall of Fame as well, and it was really, really cool to see them hit that mark of 7 in their, very not done careers. Some other guys that won their first time Silver Sluggers, rookie Jackson Merrill, Jerks and Profar, who we talked about. Ketel Marte won his first career Silver Slugger. Manny Machado won his first. William Contreras won his first. Shohei Ohtani won his 3rd. Anthony Santander won his first. Bobby Witt Jr. won his first. Josh Smith and Brent Rooker won their first. Brent Rooker was the first A to win the Silver Slugger in a couple decades. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Won his 2nd Silver Slugger of his career. A lot of great things, not the biggest boxes checked, but still boxes checked on their way to potential, getting their number retired by their teams or potentially even Hall of Fame induction. So exciting stuff. Award season's almost wrapped up. We already know who the Cy Youngs and MVPs are going to be, but it's just really, really exciting, to have these things officially get added to the Baseball Reference pages and, be a feather in their caps towards whatever their end career looks like. I appreciate those of you that made it this far. This is one of the longest episodes of the pod, but there was a lot of players to go over, and I hope that you guys, appreciated the time put into these guys and the different fits and the culture talk that I had to bring for you guys, but also let me know in the comments below where you think I'm right, where you think I'm wrong. And in a few months, we'll be able to compare and contrast. I got a lot of predictions correct last year. I got a lot of things wrong last year predicting free agent placement. And it's a very, very exciting time. A lot of times there's mystery teams that come out of nowhere and sign guys. There was at least 10 teams today that I didn't talk about signing a single one of these guys, which, isn't going to happen. So I hope you guys have a great Solo Shot Saturday, great rest of your week. And I'll see you guys in the next one.